According to James Oliver Curwood in The Great Lakes and the Vessels That Plow Them, and now, by certain superstitious sailors, the Bannockburn is supposed to be the Flying Dutchman of the inland seas, and there are those who will tell you in all earnestness that on icy nights when the heaven above and the sea below are joined in one black pale, they have descried the missing Bannockburn, a ghostly apparition of ice, scudding through the gloom. And this is but one more illustration of the fact that all of the romance of men who go down to the sea in ships is not confined to the big oceans. Welcome to Shipwreck Sunday. My name is Eleanor. Just a quick disclaimer for a younger audience before we dive in. This story may be disturbing to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Okay everyone, let's get into it. SS Bannockburn was a Canadian-registered steel-hulled freighter that mysteriously disappeared on Lake Superior, and this gives her the reputation as the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes, a ghost ship lost to time. She was built for the Montreal Transportation Company of Montreal, Quebec, and she was built by the Sir Railton Dixon and Company of Middlesbrough, England. She was laid down as yard number 386 sometime in the early 1890s, and she was launched in 1893. Before we get into her service history, let's look at her specs. She was a Great Lakes freighter, sometimes called Lakers, and her tonnages sat at 1,620 gross registered tons and 1,035 net registered tons. She was 245 feet long, had a beam of 40.1 feet wide, and a depth of 18.4 feet deep. She wasn't remarkably beautiful, just a large, dark-colored hull with one skinny funnel in the aft section of the boat. She averaged a crew of 20, and her identification number was C102093. As for propulsion, she was equipped with two boilers that powered one triple expansion 3-cylinder engine and turned one screw, though we don't know her average speed. More than likely, she was probably pretty slow, given this setup, but as long as she was reliable, that's all that was needed. It's also important to note that she was often seen towing the 4-masted schooner barge Minnedosa for extra cargo space. As a regular freighter, she was rather unremarkable. But as a ghost ship, her story leaves us mystified. If you're enjoying this video, leave me a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and let me know down in the comment section below. Okay, let's look at her service history. Prior to 1897, her career was hardly noteworthy. She performed her duties carrying cargo to and from Montreal, Canada without incident. On October 15, 1897, she was very technically sank for the first time. She was laden with grain destined for Kingston, Ontario from Chicago, Illinois, under the command of Captain John Irving, when she struck the wing wall of lock number 17 of the Welland Canal and sprung a leak, sending her to the bottom of the shallow canal where she took on 9 feet of water before coming to rest. This was disastrous as it destroyed her cargo, but no one was killed or injured, and she was raised successfully afterward. Several months prior, she'd been badly damaged when she ran on the rocks near Snake Island Light on the morning of April 27, 1897 at full speed. However, the crew dumped 30,000 bushels of grain cargo and she was then able to float. There were no injuries or deaths, though her forefoot and frame were badly stove in. Another thing we need to keep in mind is that she was a steel-hulled freighter built prior to 1947, meaning the quality of the steel was brittle in colder temperatures and porous, and maintenance wasn't always reliably done. This poorly smelted steel was a contributing factor in many Great Lakes shipping disasters, and could have played a role here. Her final voyage was just a couple years after the turn of the century, beginning on November 20th, 1902. Her final voyage began at the Canadian lakehead near what is now called Thunder Bay under Captain George R. Wood with a crew of 21. She was downbound carrying 85,000 bushels of wheat, departing the city of Fort William, Ontario on November 20th to head toward Georgian Bay. She suffered a slight grounding as the keel grinded against either the rocky shores or a sandbar, but there was no apparent damage done to the boat as she entered the main body of the lake, though her departure was delayed a day. She continued her journey on the 21st. Sometime that day on the 21st, the captain of the upbound lake freighter Algonquin, Captain James McMaw, reportedly spotted her through binoculars about 7 miles to the southeast of him, about 80 miles off Keweenaw Point and 40 miles off Isle Royale. He was very familiar with the Bannockburn's profile, and he stated that he viewed her, quote, several times over the course of a few minutes to note her progress, which was very nearly on course. At one moment, however, he attempted to sight her once more and was surprised that she was gone. He figured it must have been due to the somewhat foggy weather and shrugged it off. This was the last confirmed sighting of the Bannockburn. A powerful winter storm swooped in over Lake Superior that night, and at 11 p.m., the night watch pilot house crew of the passenger steamer Huron, also upbound on Lake Superior, reported seeing lights on a boat they passed in the storm, which they believed were in the pattern of those of the Bannockburn. However, no signals of distress were observed, and the two boats passed each other without incident. This was the last time Bannockburn might have been seen. But our lovely members always make sure we feel seen. Thank you so much to our amazing YouTube members and patrons. If you'd like to have some awesome perks like episodes a full day in advance, join our YouTube memberships today. Alright, it's time to dissect her disappearance. The following day, Bannockburn was reported overdue at the Soo Locks, but given the weather the previous night, this was considered normal. When she still did not report several days later, however, the fear that she'd been lost began to fester. On November 25th, the steamer Frank Rockefeller passed through a field of floating debris near Stannard Rock Light, and this might have been that of the Bannockburn, though she'd not yet been reported lost, and the crew of the Rockefeller did not know what might have caused the debris field. By November 30th, the boat and her crew were officially declared lost. Of course, the families and friends of the crew were distressed, and by November 26th, the pressure from them got to Mr. L.L. Henderson, manager of the Montreal Transportation Company, and he claimed that he'd received a wire from the Chicago office of the Underwriters Association, which was providing insurance coverage for the ship. He told a local newspaper, the Fort Williams Times-Journal, that the message said, quote, "The steamer Bannockburn has been located on the northern shore of Lake Superior opposite Michipicoten Island. Crew safe." However, he later admitted this was a straight-up lie, and that he had no positive information as to where Bannockburn was, but had based his hopeful assertion on news he had heard from another freighter, the Germanic, that she'd been seen safely anchored there. However, this was not true. She was not safely anchored here. Eventually, the underwriters came to their own conclusion that the Bannockburn had stranded on Caribou Island. This island is surrounded by a dangerous reef, and its lighthouse had been intentionally turned off on November 15th. If Captain Wood of the Bannockburn had been hoping to spot its warning light in the darkness of the storm on the 21st, the only evidence he would have had of its closing proximity would have been the shock of the hull hitting the reef itself. However, as far as we know, this isn't true either. On Friday, December 12, 1902, the captain of the Grand Marais life-saving station found a cork life preserver from the Bannockburn washed up on the beach, and this is the only item from the boat that has ever been recovered. Captain Wood from Port Dalhousie, Ontario, was the oldest person aboard the Bannockburn at the age of 37. Most of the crew were between the ages of 17 and 20. His first mate, Alex Graham, was also from Port Dalhousie, Ontario, and one of the boat's two wheelsmen, Arthur Callaghan, was the youngest at only 16. For a lake freighter, she was considered pretty new at only 9 years old, though the general inexperience of her crew might have played a factor in her loss. Such young crews, however, were common on the Great Lakes at the turn of the 20th century because they were so much cheaper to hire, and shipping firms had strong financial incentives and no legislative reason not to take advantage of this fact. The only known memorial to the Bannockburn is a stone tablet in a church in Port Dalhousie, Ontario, in memory of her captain, and was purchased by his brother. All 21 crew were lost. Rest in peace to all of them. There are many theories as to what went wrong, but until her wreckage is located, we'll never know for sure. Captain McMaw of Algonquin proposed that the ship might have experienced a boiler explosion, though he did not hear one, and no charred wreckage typical of such an explosion was ever found. Alternatively, the, at that time, uncharted danger of the Superior Shoal might also have been the cause, since Captain Wood wouldn't have been aware of its existence. When the Soo locks were drained at the end of the season, a hull plate from a boat was found in the lock, and it was assumed to have belonged to the Bannockburn, and without this piece, her hull would have had an unknown weak point. There have been numerous sightings of the ghostly Bannockburn on foggy nights on Lake Superior from scared and superstitious sailors. Some paint her as a heroic ghost ship, whose appearance forced boats to change course abruptly, missing unseen treacheries in Lake Superior. Others mirror her to the Flying Dutchman or Edmund Fitzgerald sightings, which haunt witnesses for years and years to come. Originally planned to be a beautiful ocean liner with a sharp, pointed bow, the ship was now turned into a makeshift aircraft carrier thrown together quickly at the beginning of World War II. She'd ferry deadly aircraft to the Guadalcanal campaign, and then Hio would meet her fate at the Battle of the Philippine Sea. We'll get more into her story next Sunday on the next episode of Shipwreck Sunday.